So today I'm changing out this dude, the crank position sensor on my X5 diesel. It is an E70. I've seen this done. Everyone does it from underneath the car, but then they need a like a 2-foot extension in order to get the starter bolts off, because as you can see, the starter is right there. And you see those two E-Torx bolts, one right there, one right there. That's what holds the starter in. In the crank position sensors, it's directly underneath that starter. Thanks, BMW. So I'm doing it from the top because I don't have 2 feet of extensions in order to get those bolts from behind up near the transfer case. So I'm taking everything up here off. So rain tray, that air intake duct, just get some more room. Battery has been unhooked. I'm leaving the hatch open or else I can't get it back open. And so what I did first was make sure you can break those E-Torx bolts loose. You can get a 12-point 10mm on them. But it's a little, the top one, this sits a little bit crooked on it, and I was afraid it was going to strip out because those bolts are kind of tight. So what I did was, thankfully I have one of these 1/4-inch swivel head ratchets, and then I have an actual proper E-Torx. It's an E12. Unfortunately it's 3/8, so I had to step it down. Have a little step down. So I was able to put my hand back there, swivel the neck around, and get this on the bolt. But after that, it's really hard to get enough leverage on this in order to crank it down. So what I did was I just doubled up a deep socket onto the handle, like so. And that gave me enough leverage in order to break both of those loose. Like this handle is pressed up against the firewall, and it's not possible to do that unless you have a ratchet that has a swivel neck on it. So that was required in order to break those loose, and then now that they're broken loose, I'm going to go back with this swiveling 10mm 12-point and get them out the rest of the way. I did remove just pretty much everything. I removed the bracket for the PCV for the brake booster, so that can flex a little bit and get out of the way. I took the bolt for the dipstick tube out. It doesn't allow as much room because this bracket is all one piece. So, and this power cable does not want to come out of this, and I'm not about to start prying it because everything is plastic. Again, thanks BMW. And then in order to get to the, I don't know if I can see it, but there's a, sorry, actually I turned off the camera. Barely see the nut for the starter right there in the center of the screen. And it's kind of a pain in the butt to get to, but again, this swivel ratchet comes in handy. And what I did was, it's a 13mm, so I have an extension. I think this is a 4-inch extension with a 13mm, and then went in through here, and then I was able to get it up right there. That's it, where all your power cables are attached to. So then I was able to get that broken loose because it was actually pretty tight. Just watch out because all of these hoses in here, there's rigid plastic hoses on here, so you don't want to put too much pressure on that ratchet because you really could crack something. So I'm going to loosen that and then get these two starter bolts off with the 10mm and get down underneath there, swap the sensor out. Let's see how it goes. Alright, so here's a quick shot of the socket with everything on that bolt. You can see it's pretty much it is up against the firewall, the handle is. So then it's really hard to get enough leverage to break that loose. So once it's set up in that position, take a little extension with a deep socket, slide it over the handle, and crank down as hard as I can, and was able to break them both loose. Okay, starter is out. Here are the bolts, both the exact same length. They got some crud on them, so I'm going to clean those up before I put them in. That'll hopefully make them go in easier. They're kind of a pain in the butt to get out. They would loosen up and get too loose to get them with the ratchet, and then I'd do it with my hand, and then it'd get too tight to get it with my hand, so I'd keep going back and forth on that. So starter's out, and then right there you can see there's two hex bolts, or Allen bolts. The one on the top is the sensor that sits directly underneath the starter, and then there's a bracket right there. You can see the plug right there for it. It kind of makes a loop and goes into a plug. I have that unplugged. And this is the kind of crap that makes BMW get a bad reputation. I mean, there has to be another place where they could have put that sensor, so you don't have to take the starter out. But it's out. Those hexes are a size, what is this, HW5? Yeah, it's the same ones that are used to take off the cowl bolts, the rain tray bolts. It's the exact same. So, I'm going to take that out and see what we got. Alright, old sensor is out. Took it out with the bracket. I'm going to have to jack with this a little bit, and I'm sure there's a lever or something I need to pull on this plug in order to slide it off the bracket. Looks pretty similar to the old one. The hex is captured, and it's not a 5, it's a HW4, but the bolt holding this bracket in is a 5. So sensor takes a 4mm hex to get that off, and be very careful because mine actually started to strip out when I was taking it off. So I sprayed some P-Blaster in there, let it sit for a minute, tapped on it, and then used a extension centipede with this long HW4 4mm on my impact, and I was able to pop it loose really quick. Luckily it didn't strip, because it is in a horrible spot if that strips out. Luckily I have this Craftsman bolt extractor, like strip bolt extractor set, so if it did strip out, I'll just put the centipede extension set on there, hammer this onto the bolt head, and then you're able to extract it out. So I don't use these often, but when I do need them, they are an absolute lifesaver. So new sensor's going to go on. There's no O-ring on the old one. I heard that there was, but there is no O-ring, so this one's going to go on as is, and just pretty much do everything in the reverse order. Next time I do this, I'll probably take this bar out, because that will free up a good amount of arm space, and then I'll probably end up breaking off one of these permanent clips for the brake booster line hose. Probably want that one down there, and then that way I can just separate this piece completely and get even more room to work down here. So you can see it down there. It's a little grummy. I have something leaking. It might be the valve cover gasket, but I'll tackle that in a few months.